Welcome to the channel all about economic board games. Today I'm going to be giving you a run through of Augsburg 1520, an older game this one. You've got auction mechanic which features heavily. That's brought to you by the designer at the top here, and these guys brought it to you as well. And we are reenacting as Jacob Fugger, who's gold for the king and queens. And this one plays 2 to 5 players, should take you in the region between 25 and 75 minutes depending on your player count there. And in this game, as I mentioned, we are reenacting. Each player is going to be Jacob Fugger, and they're trying to basically give money to these nobles in return for privileges rather than having them repay the debt. But I'll go into more detail on that. If you're after a shorter insight into the video or the game, should I say, check out my overview I did last week. Now I'm playing as today a 2-player game, and it does vary differently depending on if you go all the way up to 5. It's just me as usual, so I'll try my best. And as I say, the auction mechanic features heavily. If you don't like auction games, this is not for you. And the artwork is quite dated, shall I say, as well, but the mechanics work wonderfully. So to begin with, each player's got this player board. You've got these columns. I'm not going to go too heavy on the rules off the offset. We'll kind of pick it up as we go through. So we've got yellows and blues. We've gone with yellows to start with. Each player would have had 1,500 money, which would normally be face down because it's kind of crucial to see what your opponents will figure out what they've got, because you're potentially buying churches and cathedrals and buying cards as well. So that would normally be face down. And these cards, these what they call debt certificates, would normally be face down as well. And your opponents would only potentially be able to see the backs of them. But today I'm going to be showing you both of them. So each player starts with 2 jokers, and they'll have had 7 cards distributed out, and they'll have to decide which of these 7, if not all of them, if they can afford them, they want to keep. And they can see the values on the front, the 200 match the back as well. Now you will pick these dependent on the values. They range from 1 to 17. You can see we've got one of the higher nobles for Philippe here, and there's the 4 nobles. You'll find those colours in this entire in the deck. And the last one, Maximilian, he's not too fussy. You can use any combination of cards to bid for his privileges. So these guys are probably thinking, I need a little bit of everything to be able to participate in the auction, because you can't participate in the auction for Leo if you don't have any Leo cards. So we're probably looking at these thinking, right, that's really nice. And you can see the prices typically range from 200 to 400. So 350 it's going to cost us to pay this money to Leo, and this is the card to show our sort of certificate that we provide of the debt, basically. So that's what the game's about. It's sort of, I believe, based on a true story of the family. You're paying nobles money, and in return you're getting privileges, and this represents that money you have spent and provided Leo. So we're going to keep the Leo one. We will probably leave that one for now. We don't want to spend all our money. We'll probably keep one of these Louises just to participate there. We definitely want one that 17 is a must. Now we start with 1,500 money, and we've already spent 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 950. So we definitely want a green one. We'll probably just leave it there. So we would then sort of show our opponents that we're going to pay the right amount of money, so they don't actually know exactly what we've got, but they can see we've spent, what, 750, 800, 1100. We've spent 1,300 of our 1,500. So money in this game's cardboard, which does the job. These that you didn't want go in the discard pile face up. So that's those guys, and again I'll sort of show you what we got. So these guys are probably thinking the same. Have we got any Philippe? Oh, we've got no Philippe, so we might be in trouble there. We picked up a joker, which I think is always handy to keep one of them. And Louise, we're definitely going to keep that 17. And we're going to take a 12 in that. Now there is reason to want to have some of the lower ones as well, which will kind of make sense, but I'll go over those, see if I can afford them. So we got 250, 550, 850. Oh, this is going to be pricey actually. 850 it's 1650, so we can't afford them. So we'll lose that one, and that's going to be 800 plus the 600. So that's 1,400 spent there. And again, those go face up on top. So what did we spend? 1,400, I think it was. So that's a change. Now we're getting somewhere. So that's kind of the starting sort of setup, shall we say. So these guys are first. So they got this little token. They put it on Philippe, and you always work the auction from Philippe, and you go left to right. And once you've gone through the auction, that's phase 1 done. You then do phase 2, which is acquiring your money, your prestige, and your debt certificates, and then you end the round and you move the counter. But we'll play out one round today. And so we start with the auction. Philippe, these guys are starting play, so they place the first bid. Now, what do you do? So it's kind of like poker, really. You are going to make a bid, and you don't necessarily have to show the cards in any way or decide on which cards you're going to spend. But you can see to bid on Philippe, you have to actually have a card of Philippe to be able to participate. You can't make it up and say 3 or 4 or up the bid when you haven't physically got the cards. So in this case, these 3 aren't really going to be of use. So you've got your jokers, and you've actually got 1 Philippe. So we could do a maximum of 3 as a bid. So you can use jokers to up the bid, but you always have to have at least 1 card of that noble. So you can never just say, right, I'm bidding 2 for that and use 2 jokers. You have to have at least 1. Now, why is the opening bid important? Because you like in poker, really, well, not exactly like poker, because that's well, depending which type of poker you play. But let me stop the nonsense now. If you bid 3 cards, you're potentially off-putting your opponents from really wanting to participate with the auction, and they might just say, oh, you know what, I'm passing, and you can have it. So and that matters, because if you actually win the auction without people matching your cards, you don't actually have to compete against other players for the high number. So let's just give you a demonstration. These guys are going to bid 2, so again, they don't have to necessarily pick which ones, and they just say, right, I'm bidding 2 for Philippe. These guys actually don't have any Philippe, so in this case they would have to pass. They couldn't use the jokers. Now these guys have actually made a bid of 2, so they have to honour that. So they now decide which 2 they're going to choose. They couldn't choose the 2 jokers. They have to use a Philippe. So unfortunately they've spent their 17. So they show the cards, and they've won the auction. And they put these face up on the discard pile, and for having won the auction for Philippe, they get a choice of one of these 5, what they called, they are prestige cards, I believe, and these give you benefits to up on here. So they are probably going to go for, what should we go for? We'll go for this one. And what does this one do? So they will get a improvement on the yellow columns. You got the yellow, which is typically money. You got the orange, which is prestige, all about victory points, which is crucial. And this final sort of violet column, which is these symbols, is all about getting more debt certificates at the end of the round. And that's these debt certificates which you'll need to be able to play those poker hands as such. So in this case, they're going to probably think, well, I'll take, you have to take 2 of the 3, and if you decide not to take 1 of them or 2 of them, you get rewarded with 2 victory points instead. And this is kind of the victory point track. So we're going to take the yellow option, which means we can either do a privilege or an increase in the step of the yellow track. Now, a privilege, we haven't actually got the capability yet, so you start off with these sort of darker versions, so the dark yellow, orange and violet. So at the end of the round, we're currently going to get 600 guilders, 3 victory points and 4 debt certificates. But we're going to increase the step. Now, in a 2-player game, there's 1 each of the top steps here, and there's 2 here, and these massively vary depending on a table in the rule book as to how many of these are there. So 2-player game set up here. So they're going to take 1 step. They don't actually pay anything, and they've improved their monetary gains for the end of the round. So in this case, they're going to get 900 at the end of the round, and you can see on the camera it says privilege 300. So if on a future privilege we decide not to use this to actually improve the step, we can take the privilege, which is get 300 money in this case. So we've done one of the 3 options, and we're going to, well, we've only got a choice of these, so we're going to do one of those, and you can see the symbology matches. So we're going to go up a step, and you have to work your way upwards. You can't just take the top one. So we're going to put that down, which now means rather than 4, we're going to get 5 debt certificates at the end of the round, and you have to pay for the debt certificates. You can't just get them for free unless you get some of the juicy benefits at the top. So we've done 2 of the 3 options, and that's literally it. We just sort of put that aside, discarded, and that'll get reshuffled in after the second round. Over to Louise then for the auction, and the player who won the last auction, which were these guys, get to place the first bid again. And let's give you a different example then. So these guys are going to start the bid with, well, you can see of their hand, they wouldn't be able to use these two. They're going to bid one card, and they don't necessarily have to, well, they're going to have to decide on that one if it comes to it. These guys have the option to choose these ones from their hand, because again, they can't use either of those nobles for Louise in this case. And so what could they do? They could call it, and which would probably be a really good option because they've bid one. They know they've got 17, which is the highest out of the range, so 1 to 17. Why would they want to bid two? They'd only lose more cards. So they're gonna call it. So in this case, they call, and it was 1 and 1. They could have raised it and said, I'll raise it 1, so it'd then be 2, or they could have passed. And clearly, you don't want to pass on too many of these because, you know, that's how you get your privilege, is to give you this sort of engine building throughout the game. And you can see in a two-player game, there's only 4 rounds. So obviously, these are hidden normally. They've called, and these guys don't have an opportunity to raise it. So that makes the first round bid even more important. So they then reveal, and you can see it's the highest number wins. So 17 wins, these guys get their card back. Now, because they participated in the bid, they actually get 100 money sort of compensation for having not won. And if there was a free play game, they'd have got 50 for third play if they participated. So they get their cards back. These guys have actually spent that card, they pop that on here, and they win the auction. So they are going to go for, let's not think too hard, we'll just go for this one. And this means they're going to get 500 money straight away, which is great because you get more power to buy those debt certificates. And they're probably thinking, you know what, I want to get up this violet track because that's all about having the option to get debt certificates. So they've chosen that one, and there we go. That's done. So they are first bid on Leo. And let's try and give you a different demonstration. So they're gonna bid one card, and again, you don't have to necessarily have chosen that, but they've only got the one. These guys are going to go, right, I'm going to go 2. So they've raised it by 1 card. So these guys are thinking, right, I could still compete. I could potentially raise to 3 because I've got 3 jokers here, and as long as I got 1, and we'll do that as an example actually, because at the moment, if they called it and they said, right, I'll call you, I can't remember what these guys said. These guys said 1, these guys said 2. So if they did call, which we're not going to do, but I'll just show you, what would happen is they'd show both cards. In this case, this player would win because the 15 beats the 13. But these guys are instead going to go, you know what, I really want to win this, and they play 3. And these guys can't actually play 3 cards, but that player wouldn't know. They'd only see this. They might think they might have, you know, a couple of Leos, but the hand is dwindling. They got a couple more rounds left, so they play 3 cards. And these guys are like, oh, you know what, I'm passing. So without even having to show them, because if they had, the 15 would have won it. They've actually won the auction by just playing more cards. So that's you know a crucial way to win. If you decide to pick up a lot of the smaller numbers, so like a 5, a 6, and an 11, you could still win the auction even though you don't have that 15 or 17. So these guys win. Now, because these guys didn't actually show the cards, you know, they engaged in the auction, but they didn't actually reveal because it wasn't called, they don't get the bonus. So these guys have won the auction. They show the cards, put them on the top, and they have won Leo. And they're going to go for so there's 3 left. Let's not think too hard again. So we're going to go for this one, and we're going to utilize the yellow option to get the 900 on there. And we're going to go at 1 more on the end track here, so we get this 6 depth certificate, and that's 2 of the 3. So blue won that over to Maria, and they choose, and they're going to bid 2, which, you know, this player can see that they've only got 2 cards left, so clearly they're not going to be bidding on the final one. So these guys might just sort of, you know, let them have it really, because they know they're going to get one of these 2 cards. But if there's one of them they really want, then clearly they're gonna want to bid. So, you know, let's just say they call it. They fancy participating, so they call. They've matched the 2 cards. They then reveal, and in this case, these guys have the highest number, 15 over the 12. And remember, like I said earlier, even though these might have a 12, a 6 and a 3, it's not accumulative. It's only the one highest card that matches. So these guys, because they participated, they get the bonus and get their cards back. So they take 100. These guys have actually won Maria, and they are going to take this one. Now, they're going to utilise the bottom two, and first off, they're going to take this one here. So because it's not available, and what I mean is that the steps, you've got 1, 2, 3 and 4. So 1 and 2 they've got, and the third one an opponent's actually got. So they're going to spend this, and because it's not available, they get to pinch it from an opponent. So they've spent that option to up the step. Because it wasn't there, they pinch it, and because these guys have had it robbed from them, they get a compensation of either 100 money or a victory point. And you know what, we're just going to take the victory point in this case, because they are very valuable. So that's one of the 3 spent. They're then going to spend the other one, so they could do either a privilege that they've attained. So this privilege at the bottom with the dot dot basically means you can build a church or a cathedral using your privilege, which is this, or you could use it to increase a step. Now, if we did use a privilege, we could basically buy a church or a cathedral, and you can see they're on the side here, and they are quite expensive to buy initially, and the next player gets it slightly cheaper, and so on, and it's the same for the cathedral. But for the cathedral, but why do you need those? So as you go around the victory point track, if yellows gets to here and they suddenly score 7 points, if they haven't built a church, they're not going to get past this 25 point until they've built a church. And once they've built a church on the board, they're able to go past this with the victory points. So you can see how crucial getting a church is. And a part of the strategy is wanting other players to buy the churches before you get to there, so you can pay slightly less money. And it's the same for the cathedrals. You won't get past this 45 mark unless you've built a cathedral. And if it does come down to the fact that, you know, everyone's not bought a cathedral in the last round, it might come down to whoever's paid the most money for the church, which will break ties. So that's how crucial churches and cathedrals are. But if you buy them too early, you've spent money which you could have potentially used to get better cards and win more things to build your engines here. So that's what you could do as a privilege. Or in this case, they could use that option here for a minter, which is basically choosing the top one, and there's no disparity between them. And it means you plonk it here, and at the end of the round, you're going to get a free debt certificate. So normally you have to pay for the ones you attain, but you're going to get a free one. So do we want to take a free one, or do we want to up on the step? I think we're going to up on the step just to sort of show you what that's about. So we're going to up the 4th step. Now this is this last big one, and it ousts the 3rd one. So this goes back to the player it was taken from. Now, they've already had their compensation, and I believe it just goes back here. If this player have had that one, and we had the 3rd and then went to the 4th, we'd have took that one, and they'd have been compensated with that one. So that's a bit nasty on them, but they sort of had some compensation, and we now have this one. So this is the maximum you can get on this violet row, and this will let you, at the end of the round, you'll get 1 free debt certificate, and you'll get 6 additional to choose from and purchase. And if you decide to use the privilege here, you can build your master builder or your minter. So you could build your minter on this one. Where was it on the 3rd one? But in this case, you can build a master builder. Now, what does the master builder do? So this is going to be the second action we're actually going to do. The master builder, rather than actually spend one of these privileges to build a church or a cathedral, you can actually build a master builder, and on a future turn, rather than having to spend, say we're on a future turn where you got this card, rather than having to spend that to build a church, you could do that option and that option, and then just do this as an extra option, so it's not involved with that. You just build your cathedral or church, so it saves you sort of 2 extra actions, and you can use these for better things. So that's what the master builder does. So we've gone up 2, we're happy with that. Over to the last auction, and these guys are, were they first, are they? Yep. Now, Maximilian's slightly different. You can bid any colour cards, because you'll notice that his face doesn't appear in the deck. So these guys are going to go 2. And these guys, they're equally going to call it, and they're going to go 2. But you don't want to be frivolous with your cards because it's quite expensive to buy them back. So they might think, you know what, I'm not too fussed in that on that card there. I'm going to keep these and they'll be used for the next round. So cards you don't use are kept from round to round, and there's no hand limit. But in this case, they're going to call because they want a part of this action, because there's potentially 2-step increases on the victory points. Now, they both call, they both show what they've got. And in this case, it's literally down to the highest number. And if it's a tie, it's going to go down to whoever you work through: Maria, Leo, Lewis, and Philip. So if they both had, say, for example, well, actually, I need to just clarify that, because it's the highest number, and then it goes. So Leo in this case would prevail, because basically, if it was the high, if they both put, if this was a Maria 15, let's just say it was that card, then clearly the 15 beats the 12. But it then comes down to, if it was a tie and it was a 15 and this was a 15, which is a good example of the card there, it comes down to the order. So Philippe has the overarching sort of, breaking ties there. So if it was that case, Leo would have won if the numbers were tied, but in this case the number ousted it. So they get their cards back, and because they participated, they're going to get 100 money. And these guys have spent all their cards, and they get the final one. So we're probably, it's a tough one, because we could go for the victory points and go step 1 and 2, which means we're going to get 8 victory points at the end, and the potential in the later turns to get the coat of arms. Or we could get some money, because we've only got 300. We're only going to get 900. So I think we're going to go for at least one of the money. So that takes up to 1200, and we're definitely going to go for the up on that one. So that's that card done, and that is the end of the round. We're going to phase 2, which is attaining all your benefits off your board. So these guys, they're not accumulative. You don't get 6, 9, and 1200 altogether. You get the top one. So they're going to get 1200 in money. These guys are going to get 900. You know what, I won't take too long over this because I'm only doing sort of one round for you. So that would all be secret. So prestige points, they're going to get 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're also going to get, well, these guys are going to get 3, so you can see already the importance of that. Where were they? Was that 5? 1, 2, 3, yep. 5 and 3. And finally, the debt certificates. So these guys are going to get 1 free, so they take that one first because they're not paying for it. They then take their 6. 6. These guys will be getting 5, and that's literally phase 1 and 2. You would then end the round, so move the marker there. You'd bring out the next 5 certificates, and there's only 10 out there. Now, after this next round, you'd reshuffle all them and bring out a random 5 again, and that is the end of the round. Now, you would then restart. You've got your 6 cards. Well, before you've revealed those and done the end of the round, you would have had to choose which ones of these you've attained that you're going to be spending the money to keep, because having knowledge of that impacts which ones of these you decide to go. So you would have spent the money, done those, and then you would have revealed them and done the round, and these would have gone back on the top. And that's pretty much it, folks. You go from round to round, and once you get to the end, there is no end game bonus points. It's literally acquiring victory points as you go throughout, and whoever has the most victory points wins. Or if you are bumping against one of these because both of you haven't got a church, then it's whoever I think is paid the most, and there's tiebreakers there as well. So going through a few more bits on the board, then you can see that going for the church and the cathedral early is going to cost you more, so you might want to wait on that one. You can see it goes from the first church is 900 all the way to 100, and the cathedrals start at 1200 and work their way down to 100 as well. Now, I haven't mentioned this coats of arms or nobility. If you, let's just say this player has acquired, these steps here as one of these actions, that they haven't got any further steps to go up, so they're going to do a privilege. They can purchase not purchase, but attain a letter of nobility or coat of arms. And the first player to get there, well, you want to get it as soon as you can, because they get more victory points. So if you go for the letter of nobility in this case, you plonk it there, and it's 5 victory points additional to the 12 or the 5 at the end of the round, which is great. And these can't ever be robbed or shifted on. But the next player to go there is going to get 4, and it goes all the way down to 2. So the sooner you get that, the better. And 4 rounds, if you get there really quick, it's potentially 15-20 points. And it's the same for the coat of arms, is 4, 3, 2 and 1. So if you get there both first, that's 9 extra points each round, as well as the 12. Now, if an opponent does pinch this, that's fine, they stay there, and you, at the end of the round, you're certainly getting the 5 plus those 9 as well. So that's what they're all about. The money here, if you ever get to the top, you can see it's 1,600. There is no sort of added privileges to it. You just get the 300 if you decide to utilise that privilege to, rather than going up a step, because there is no more steps. And I think I already mentioned that another way to get victory points is if you don't decide to do 1 or 2 of the actions, you're going to get 2 points for each action you missed. And that kind of gets utilised on the last round because, well, why do you really want money on the last round, and why do you want more debt certificates? You want the victory points, so you'll generally be spending those actions just to get victory points. So obviously, if you manage to win 3 or 4 out of the 5 in a 2-player game, that's considerably more victory points for that one. And that's literally the end game. So it's this whole concept of you paying money to these nobles in the form of debt, and you're attaining these cards to hopefully win the auctions to get the best privileges from them, increase your sort of columns here to get more victory points and the option for more money on additional rounds. I think the auction mechanic is fantastic on this. It's that power play as to how many cards you're going to play, and then sort of which cards are then, if you're called, are you dish out, you're going to go for jokers, it's just fascinating because you might actually win an auction even though you don't know your opponent's got it, but they've got the 17, and you actually win it just by playing 3s, 4s and 5s, and you can see, these guys have paid 400 for that. Whereas, the other players might have paid 200, 250 for the lesser value ones. So very intriguing with that auction. And clearly, you want to be winning more auctions than the majority of other players as you go through, because it's just crucial getting these privileges. They just up you in certain areas, and I love that subtle interaction as you get to pinch one off your opponents, and the money is crucial in the way it interacts with the victory point trackers. Are you going to get it first and spend more money? Are you going to wait for your opponents to get it? So you have to really eke out the victory points as you go through, because there's just nothing at the end. Money's worth nothing. The debt certificates, you can have the best ones, they're worth nothing, and you might just have to go all out on the last round just to get that, because the cards aren't going to do anything for you. So hopefully, guys, that has been of use to you. This is quite a hard game to get hold of. It's an older one, but if it had good artwork to it, I think this would sort of rate highly, very highly on my list. But besides that, the mechanics function superbly, and I'd definitely check this one out if you do get a chance.